Hi there, my name is Steve Gearhart, and this is the Unagi Observer. Thank you so much for stopping by and watching this week. This week we're going to do a movie review, and it is the review of a movie that is the latest from the MCU called Shang Chi. Now, I had seen this on opening weekend, but I decided to let it wait to do a review because I wanted to marinate in my brain a little bit, and plus I also had to prepare for OnCon 5, which was a lot of fun, by the way. So, on that topic, next week I think I'm going to do a dual con talk because I want to talk about OnCon 5, and I wanted to be able to do it with my swag that I got from the auction. But I'm also going to talk about Gen Con because in a couple days, that's where I'm going to be. I'm actually going to my first in-person convention since the lockdown. So I'm looking forward to that. So without further ado, though, let us talk about Shang Chi. So let's get into the actual movie itself. So what I decided to do is to start off with the things that I didn't like about the movie, the criticism, and then go on from there. We're going to start off with this with the small criticism first, which is like Black Panther. There were moments of bad CGI or not so great CGI. In Shang-Chi, there are some moments, particularly when they're in the village of Ta Lo, where some of the mythical creatures are really rendered pretty well in the CGI. And there's one particular set of mythical Chinese creatures that are not very well rendered. Not horribly, but just you'll take one look at it and you go, that could have been done better. So that's a minor complaint. It doesn't really detract from anything in the story. It's just something you happen to notice. That's all. The other problem that I had with this movie is, of course, the problem that most MCU efforts have, and that is, unfortunately, not a very strong villain. Now, what I mean by strong is not necessarily in terms of power and ability, but more along the lines of how they were written, how they were directed, how they were acted, or, combination of those things that being presented to us. And some of the characters in the MCU have been kind of jokes almost because of bad writing or bad direction or whatever. And unfortunately, the MCU just doesn't provide us with that many strong villains. Strong villains, like an example of a good strong villain, it would be Killmonger. He didn't really have any special powers. He was just, very athletic and had ability. And the writing for that character was phenomenal. The backstory was nice and meaty, and the acting, of course, was superb. I mean, look who did the job, right? Okay, right. Enough said. Okay. So it provided us a villain that we could buy into and go, this is our villain. This is our okay. Yep, here we go. So that's really important. So it was very clear to me that the MCU wanted to try to replicate that in this movie, in Shang-Chi, and they did a couple things right in terms of they got the right actor, who is Tony Leung. He plays the Mandarin, the main villain, and that's this guy. He is a very good actor in China and Hong Kong cinema. He is an A-lister. In fact, I would almost tell you to go to... No, I would tell you to go to his IMDb, check out his list of movies, and just start cherry-picking and just watch it. He's a joy to watch. He's a really good actor, and you'll see why they chose him for this. And he did the best possible job with what he had. So the acting is not the problem. Tony Leung is not the problem here. The writing is. You don't get a lot of meat into the writing like you did in Black Panther. So unfortunately, the villain is hard to buy into. You could see that they're trying to make him a little bit more complex, like they made Killmonger. It kind of falls short. You're like, oh yeah, okay, good, we're gonna get a good villain, and then it just doesn't get that extra step. You know what I mean? And so it kind of falls short, which is too bad because again, Tony Leung is an amazing, amazing actor. I first saw him in Chongqing Express, which is a Hong Kong art house movie by Wong Kar-wai. Strongly urge you to watch that movie. Anyway, so the Mandarin is not by any means a joke villain. Like, you take him seriously. He's a villain, okay? He's a bad guy. You take him seriously. You feel for him in certain ways. You feel for him as a bad guy in certain ways. And it's just one of those things where it's just like, it's almost there. He's almost there. They almost got the writing right, but it's just not quite. Not quite. So that, unfortunately, was my major complaint. But again, it's not Tony Leung's fault. I blame the writing. All right, so let's get on to the good stuff. So the good stuff is that this movie is otherwise pretty well paced. It has a good rhythm to it. It has a good storyline. Of course, it changes from the comic book of the early 1970s. And it does parallel it somewhat in that Shang Chi, the original Shang Chi comic book character, is the son of a powerful Chinese crime lord, and he doesn't want to follow in his father's footsteps, and at some point he has to confront his father. Same concept in this movie. Shang-Chi, of course, is a guy who's living in California. He is doing his job. He seems like a nice, affable kind of guy, and you don't know much about him until as the movie progresses and you find out that his father is this ancient Chinese warlord who has been questing for power since, for the past 1,000 years. I'll explain that in a moment. And so the story goes along those lines, and in a unfortunate turn for the family of Shang-Chi, the mother dies, and his father goes full-on badass villain. And almost destroys the world in the process. So, anyway, Shang-Chi is his son, and he's basically wanting his son to stand by him as he brings his wife back. He believes that his wife is not dead. The Mandarin believes his wife is not dead, but is actually being held against her will in the village of Ta Lo, which is where she is from. So, you get the idea of the story. Now, the story goes from California to the mythical village in a different multiverse called Ta Lo. And this is where it gets kind of interesting in that when we get to that portion of the movie, which is the last third of the movie, it suddenly becomes a Chinese, almost like fairy tale story. And it's just amazing, and it's entrancing, and it's beautiful. Like you look at this village and you're just like, yeah, I kind of want to live there. It's just really a really neat turn to the story. Everything that leads up to that is basically Shang-Chi trying to avoid his father coming after him. Lots of martial arts stuff going on. If you are into martial arts, you are going to love this movie because there are going to be elements of Hong Kong cinema in here without the wires. So they don't sugarcoat the action. By that I mean they don't do necessarily a whole lot of slow-mo kind of things in some of the fights. Some of the fights they just let it go, and they move so fast, so quickly. And it does not suffer from the Iron Fist problem, which is that the actor who played Danny in Iron Fist, really didn't get that much training in martial arts. Not here. Everybody's trained. And it looks good. It looks really, really good. So if you're looking for a kung fu movie, you're going to get it. There's a little bit of comedy in here. It's not a comedic action movie like Ant-Man is, but it still does pretty well in terms of comedy with Awkwafina. She kind of is able to carry that part of the movie. And she's fun to watch too. And one of the things that is really important about this movie is that it has to remind you that it's a Marvel movie. Like, you forget that this is part of the MCU. Like, you're going to watch this movie and you're going to be like, and they're going to bring up something that reminds you that this is in the Marvel universe. And you're like, oh, yeah, okay, I remember. And that's really kind of cool, because that means that you're buying into the movie, you're buying into what's going on around you, and it just happens to be in the Marvel universe, but it's its own contained story. So that's a really good point about this movie, is that you don't have to watch the rest of the MCU to watch this one. I mean, honestly, guys, if this is your first MCU movie, you're starting off pretty well. But again, you have to be reminded that this is a Marvel movie, because you're going to forget. And there are, by the way, 2 end credit scenes, so you're going to have to sit all the way through. Yes, you're going to have to sit all the way through. So don't leave when the credits roll. Wait and wait, okay? There's 2 of them. And they're worth the wait, by the way. There's a couple little things that happen in the movie that are fun, and I'm not going to spoil them for you, so just keep an eye out for them. One of the other little things that I enjoyed about the movie was that in the original comic books, the Mandarin is, of course, a Chinese person operating in Vietnam, if I remember correctly, and he was more of a Iron Man villain than a Shang Chi villain, if I also remember that correctly. And he had these 10 rings, so 5 rings on each hand, and they were these power rings, and he could manipulate things with these rings, but he always had to wear them and be like, and all this stuff. In this movie, these rings do channel mystical powers, but you have to wear them as bracelets, 5 on each arm. And it works so well. You're going to enjoy it. It's just the way they are able to use this and manipulate it and make it do. Like, for example, like when the wearer of the rings wants to go from one place to another, they shoot like force bolts down just enough to give them a nice big jump, almost as if they're flying. The rings can do various things. They can act as conduits for energy. They can be their own weapons. It's just really a lot of cool stuff going on here. And it just, like I said, it just works. One of the things I will say that is at the end when you're talking about the big battle, I'm not going to talk about it because it's a huge deal. The CGI for once works pretty well in this type of fight. Most movies that do a big fight like this at the end with CGI, you have a 50-50 chance of looking good or looking bad. It looks good in this movie. So, what am I saying to you? Am I saying that you should definitely watch this movie? Absolutely. It's going to be fun. You're going to enjoy it. You're going to forget it's a Marvel movie. And then you're going to figure out how well they're going to fit in the universe. And it's just, I'm going to tell you, watch it in the theaters. Don't watch it on your television. Watch it in the theaters. Spend the money. I think it's worth it. You don't have to go to the IMAX 4D experience thing, but definitely see it on the big screen. I think you'll enjoy that. Okay, so that's it for the review. Thank you so much for sticking around and watching this. Like I said, next week I believe I'm going to talk about both OnCon 5, which I had a lot of fun at, and I'm going to talk about Gen Con, a gaming convention that I've never ever been to before, so this ought to be fun. And also, as I forgot to say, as part of OnCon 5, hopefully my swag will be here, and so I'll be able to go through my swag that I got through the auction at that convention. And the thing about Gen Con is that will be the first in-person convention I've been to since lockdown, so I'm really looking forward to this. Okay, so to that effect, remember, COVID unfortunately is still a thing. We got that variant out there, so make sure that you wear your mask, right? Your social distance, because if Gen Con is going to be as much fun as I think it's going to be, I want to continue to do that and see you guys out there, meet you and talk to you, and wouldn't that be awesome? Yes. And also, the other good thing about having going to Gen Con is that then it'll free up time for me to make the digital sushi that I owe you guys. Yes, I will be making that sometime after Gen Con. Okay, folks, with that, I bid you adieu, and thanks for watching. Love you guys, and take care.